The morning light filtered through the tall windows of Anmer Hall, casting dancing shadows across the polished floors as 9-year-old Princess Charlotte Catherine Elizabeth Diana sat cross-legged on her bedroom carpet. Her dark hair fell in gentle waves around her shoulders, and her eyes sparkled with the same warmth that had made her mother, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, beloved by millions around the world. Charlotte carefully arranged a collection of handmade Christmas cards on the floor before her, each one decorated with glitter, ribbons, and heartfelt messages written in her careful script. These weren't ordinary Christmas cards destined for friends or distant relatives. Each card was addressed to someone Charlotte had never met but felt deeply connected to through her mother's stories and charitable work. Mrs. Eleanor Thompson, age 84, Sunshine Care Home, Charlotte read aloud from the first card, her voice soft but determined. Inside, she had written, "Dear Mrs. Thompson, I hope your Christmas is filled with joy and love. My mummy told me you used to be a teacher, just like how she teaches me about kindness every day. I hope this card makes you smile." The inspiration for this project had come 3 weeks earlier during one of the family's regular visits to a local charity. Charlotte had watched her mother, Catherine, kneel down to speak with an elderly woman who lived alone. The woman's eyes had filled with tears as Catherine listened to her stories about Christmases past, when her house was filled with children and laughter. Charlotte had seen how her mother's genuine attention and care had transformed the woman's lonely afternoon into something beautiful. That evening, as they drove home through the Norfolk countryside, Charlotte had asked her mother why some people spent Christmas alone. Catherine had explained gently about elderly people whose families lived far away, children in foster care, and people who were going through difficult times during the holidays. She told Charlotte about the power of small gestures and how sometimes a simple card or a kind word could change someone's entire day. Charlotte had listened intently, her young mind already formulating a plan. She remembered how her mother always said that true royalty wasn't about crowns or titles, but about service and compassion. "We have been given so much," Catherine would tell her children, "and with that comes the responsibility to give back, especially to those who need it most." The next day, Charlotte had approached her mother with her idea. She wanted to make Christmas cards for people who might not receive any others. Not just a few cards, but dozens. She wanted to reach elderly people in care homes, children in hospitals, families at homeless shelters, and anyone else who might be spending Christmas feeling forgotten. Catherine had been deeply moved by her daughter's initiative. She could see her own values reflected in Charlotte's compassionate nature, but she also recognized something uniquely Charlotte in the determination and thoroughness with which her daughter approached the project. While Catherine often worked through established charities and formal channels, Charlotte's approach was more personal and direct. Together, they had spent hours researching local organizations and facilities. Catherine had made calls to care homes, hospitals, and shelters, explaining Charlotte's project and asking for lists of people who might appreciate receiving a handmade card. The response had been overwhelming. Facility managers and social workers were touched by the young princess's initiative and eagerly provided names and brief stories about their residents and patients. Charlotte had thrown herself into the project with remarkable dedication. Every afternoon after her lessons with her tutor, she would sit at her desk and work on the cards. She researched each person she was writing to, asking her mother to help her understand their circumstances and interests. For children in the hospital, she drew colorful pictures and included small jokes. For elderly residents in care homes, she wrote about her own life and asked questions about theirs. For families in temporary housing, she created cards with messages of hope and encouragement. The dining room at Anmer Hall had been transformed into Charlotte's workshop. Supplies covered every surface: colored paper, markers, glue sticks, ribbons, stickers, and glitter. William had jokingly complained about finding glitter in his coffee, but his pride in his daughter's project was evident in the way he helped her organize her materials and brainstormed ideas for different cards. George and Louis had initially been less enthusiastic about their sister's project, seeing it as just another one of Charlotte's causes. But, as they watched her work day after day, their attitudes began to change. George started contributing drawings for some of the children's cards, and Louis helped by sorting ribbons and stickers. The project had become a family effort, though Charlotte remained its driving force. As Charlotte worked on each card, she found herself thinking about the person who would receive it. She imagined Mrs. Thompson, the former teacher, reading her card and, perhaps remembering students from her past. She pictured 7-year-old Tommy at Great Ormond Street Hospital, recovering from surgery, and hoped her card with silly drawings would make him laugh. She thought about the Martinez family, staying at a local shelter while they searched for permanent housing, and tried to fill their card with hope and encouragement. The project was teaching Charlotte lessons that no formal education could provide. She was learning about loneliness, poverty, illness, and hardship in ways that were age-appropriate but genuine. More importantly, she was learning about her own power to make a difference, no matter how young she was. Catherine watched her daughter work with a mixture of pride and amazement. She recognized in Charlotte the same compassionate spirit that had driven her own charitable work, but she was seeing it expressed in Charlotte's own unique way. Where Catherine's approach to charity was often formal and structured through her royal duties, Charlotte's was more intuitive and personal. One evening, as Charlotte worked on a particularly elaborate card for a teenage girl spending Christmas in foster care, Catherine sat down beside her daughter. The card featured a beautiful winter scene that Charlotte had carefully drawn and colored, with the message, "Sometimes the most beautiful things come after the coldest winters. I hope this Christmas brings you warmth and happiness." "That's a very wise message," Catherine said softly, admiring the card. "Where did that come from?" Charlotte looked up from her work, her face serious. "You always say that difficult times don't last, but strong people do. I thought maybe she needed to hear that someone believes she's strong, even if they don't know her." Catherine felt tears prick her eyes. In that moment, she saw not just her 9-year-old daughter, but a young woman who was already understanding the profound impact that kindness and empathy could have on others. She also saw herself reflected in Charlotte's actions, but expressed through Charlotte's own personality and perspective. The cards were more than just a charitable project, they were becoming Charlotte's way of understanding her role as a member of the royal family. Unlike her brothers, who sometimes struggled with the expectations and limitations of royal life, Charlotte seemed to be finding her own path toward service and compassion. As December progressed and Charlotte's collection of completed cards grew, so did her understanding of the world beyond the protected walls of her royal life. Each card represented a real person with real struggles, and Charlotte was learning that her privilege came with the responsibility to care about and help those who had less. The project was also strengthening the bond between mother and daughter. Catherine found herself sharing more stories about her own charitable work, and Charlotte began asking more thoughtful questions about social issues and how the royal family could make a difference. Their evening conversations over Charlotte's card-making had become precious time for both of them. One particularly cold evening in early December, as snow began to fall outside the windows of Anmer Hall, Charlotte finished her 50th card. She sat back and looked at the neat stacks of completed cards, each one unique and personal. Tomorrow, they would begin the process of delivering them, and Charlotte could hardly contain her excitement about seeing the recipients' reactions. "Mummy," Charlotte said, looking up at Catherine, who was helping organize the cards by destination, "do you think they'll really like them?" Catherine smiled, remembering asking her own mother similar questions before her first solo charity events. "I think they'll love them, darling. But, more importantly, they'll feel loved because of them. And that's what Christmas is really about, isn't it? Making others feel loved and remembered." Charlotte nodded thoughtfully, already planning next year's project in her mind. She was beginning to understand that this kind of work wasn't just about Christmas cards or holiday gestures. It was about recognizing the humanity and worth in every person, regardless of their circumstances. It was a lesson her mother had been teaching her through example her entire life, and now Charlotte was making it her own. As the snow continued to fall outside, mother and daughter sat together surrounded by the fruits of Charlotte's labor, each card representing not just a gift to a stranger, but a step in Charlotte's journey toward understanding her own capacity for compassion and her responsibility to use her privilege in service of others. The young princess was discovering that true royalty wasn't about what you received, but about what you gave, and her Christmas card project was just the beginning of a lifetime of service that would honor both her mother's example and her own generous heart. The first delivery day arrived with crisp winter sunshine that made the frost on the windows sparkle like diamonds. Charlotte had barely slept the night before, her mind racing with anticipation and a flutter of nervousness about how her cards would be received. She had organized them by location, creating neat bundles tied with red ribbon, each one representing hours of careful work and heartfelt intention. Catherine had arranged their schedule to include 3 stops that day: Sunshine Care Home, where several elderly residents would receive Charlotte's cards, St. Mary's Children's Ward at the local hospital, and Riverside Community Center, which supported families going through difficult times. Each location held special significance for Charlotte, representing different faces of human struggle and resilience that had captured her young heart. As their car pulled up to Sunshine Care Home, Charlotte clutched her bundle of cards tightly. The building was cheerfully decorated with Christmas lights and wreaths, but Charlotte could sense something beneath the festive exterior. She had learned from her mother that many residents rarely received visitors, especially during the holidays when loneliness could feel most acute. Margaret Davies, the home's director, greeted them at the entrance with barely contained excitement. Word had spread among the staff and residents about the young princess's visit, but, more importantly, about the personal cards she had created for each person. Margaret had worked in elderly care for over 20 years, and she understood the profound impact that personal attention could have on her residents' well-being. "Your Royal Highness," Margaret said to Catherine, then turned to Charlotte with a warm smile, "and, Princess Charlotte, our residents are absolutely thrilled about your visit. Many of them haven't stopped talking about it since we told them you were coming." Charlotte walked through the corridors beside her mother, observing everything with keen interest. The halls were filled with the sounds of daily life: televisions playing in common areas, staff members chatting with residents, the soft shuffle of walkers and wheelchairs. But Charlotte also noticed the quieter moments: residents sitting alone in their rooms, staring out windows, their faces holding expressions of longing that reminded her why she had started this project. Their first stop was Mrs. Eleanor Thompson's room. Charlotte had spent extra time on Mrs. Thompson's card, decorating it with small drawings of books and apples to honor her career as a teacher. As they knocked on the door, Charlotte felt her heart beating faster. Mrs. Thompson, a woman of 84 with silver hair and bright blue eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, looked up from her chair by the window with surprise and delight. She struggled to rise, but Catherine gently insisted she remain seated as they approached. "Mrs. Thompson," Charlotte said, her voice clear but slightly shy, "I made this card especially for you." She handed over the carefully crafted card, watching intently as the elderly woman opened it with trembling fingers. As Mrs. Thompson read Charlotte's message aloud in a voice thick with emotion, tears began to flow down her cheeks. "Dear Mrs. Thompson, I hope your Christmas is filled with joy and love. My mummy told me you used to be a teacher, just like how she teaches me about kindness every day. I hope this card makes you smile." Mrs. Thompson looked up at Charlotte with wonder. "You made this just for me? You don't even know me." "I know you were a teacher," Charlotte replied earnestly. "And my mummy says teachers are some of the most important people in the world because they help children learn and grow. I wanted you to know that someone remembers how special that is." The elderly woman reached out and took Charlotte's hand. "In 40 years of teaching, I touched many lives, but I never imagined that a princess would one day touch mine. This card means more to me than you could possibly know." Catherine watched the interaction with deep emotion, recognizing in her daughter's natural empathy and genuine interest in others the qualities that made truly meaningful charitable work possible. Charlotte wasn't just performing a duty, she was connecting human to human, heart to heart. They continued through the care home, visiting a dozen more residents. Each interaction was unique and special. 92-year-old Mr. James Collins, a former war veteran, received a card decorated with small British flags and a message thanking him for his service. He saluted Charlotte with tears in his eyes, telling her stories about Christmas during wartime. Mrs. Sarah Patel, who had immigrated from India 50 years earlier, received a card with carefully drawn paisley patterns and a message celebrating her strength in building a new life in a new country. At each stop, Charlotte demonstrated the same quality her mother was famous for: the ability to make each person feel like the most important person in the room. She asked questions, listened to stories, and responded with genuine interest and compassion. The staff members followed their progress through the home, amazed by the transformation in their residents' faces and spirits. The final stop at the care home was Mrs. Dorothy Hughes, a woman who had been particularly withdrawn since her husband's death 6 months earlier. The staff had warned Catherine that Mrs. Hughes rarely spoke to visitors and might not be very responsive. Charlotte's card for her was decorated with small hearts and flowers, with a message that read, "Dear Mrs. Hughes, I know you must miss someone special very much. Love never really goes away, it just changes shape. I hope you can feel love all around you this Christmas." When Charlotte presented the card, Mrs. Hughes stared at it for a long moment without speaking. Then, slowly, she looked up at Charlotte and whispered, "How did you know? How did you know exactly what I needed to hear?" Charlotte sat down beside her and took her weathered hand. "My mummy taught me that when people are sad, sometimes they need to know that someone else understands and cares. I may not know exactly how you feel, but I know that love is the most important thing in the world." Mrs. Hughes began to cry, but they were tears of relief rather than sorrow. For the first time in months, she felt understood and less alone in her grief. As they prepared to leave Sunshine Care Home, Margaret pulled Catherine aside. "In all my years of doing this work, I've never seen such an immediate and profound impact on our residents. It's not just the cards, though they're beautiful. It's Charlotte herself, her genuine interest in each person as an individual. She has the same gift you have, but it's uniquely her own." Their next stop was St. Mary's Children's Ward, where Charlotte's nervous energy transformed into excited anticipation. She had created special cards for 8 children currently in the hospital, each one tailored to the child's age and interests based on information provided by the nursing staff. The pediatric ward was a study in contrasts, cheerful decorations and colorful murals designed to lift spirits, but underlying it all, the serious reality of childhood illness. Charlotte had prepared herself for this visit by talking with her mother about what they might encounter, but nothing could have fully prepared her for the emotional impact of meeting children facing health challenges. 7-year-old Tommy Martinez was their first visit. He had been in the hospital for 3 weeks following surgery to repair a heart defect, and he was desperately homesick. Charlotte's card for him featured drawings of superheroes and included small jokes and riddles. When she presented it to him, Tommy's face lit up with the first genuine smile he had shown in days. "Are you really a princess?" Tommy asked, his eyes wide with wonder. "I am," Charlotte replied, sitting on the edge of his bed, "but, you know what? I think you might be a superhero. The nurses told me how brave you've been." Tommy beamed at the comparison and insisted on reading every joke in the card aloud, his laughter infectious and healing. His mother, who had been maintaining a brave front for weeks, found herself crying at the sight of her son's joy. At each bedside, Charlotte demonstrated remarkable maturity and sensitivity. She adapted her approach to each child's condition and personality. With shy 11-year-old Emma, who was undergoing cancer treatment, Charlotte spoke quietly about her own struggles with shyness and how she was learning to be brave. With energetic 9-year-old Marcus, who was recovering from a broken leg, she engaged in animated conversations about sports and school. The nursing staff watched in amazement as Charlotte moved through the ward. Children who had been listless and withdrawn suddenly became animated and talkative. Parents who had been carrying heavy burdens of worry found themselves smiling and laughing along with their children. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the head of pediatrics, later told Catherine, "I've seen many celebrity visitors come through here over the years, but I've never seen anything like this. Charlotte doesn't just visit these children, she truly sees them. She connects with each child as an individual, and that makes all the difference." The final stop of the day was Riverside Community Center, which provided support services for families experiencing homelessness or housing insecurity. Charlotte had created cards for 12 families currently staying in temporary accommodation, including the Martinez family she had thought about so often while working on her project. The community center was bustling with activity, children playing in a supervised area while parents attended job training workshops, families sharing meals in the dining area, and caseworkers meeting with clients to discuss housing options. Charlotte observed it all with fascination and growing understanding of the complex challenges that could affect any family. When they met the Martinez family, Maria, Carlos, and their 3 children, Charlotte was struck by how normal and happy they seemed despite their circumstances. She had somehow expected people experiencing homelessness to look different or act differently, but these were just a regular family who had faced a series of unfortunate events that had temporarily displaced them. Charlotte presented their card, which she had decorated with images of houses and rainbows, along with a message of hope about new beginnings. As Mrs. Martinez read the card aloud to her children, Charlotte listened to their story. Carlos had lost his job when the small company he worked for closed unexpectedly, and they had been evicted from their apartment when they couldn't make rent. They were staying at the center while Carlos looked for new work and they searched for affordable housing. "We've been feeling pretty discouraged," Maria admitted, "but this card reminds us that there are good people in the world who care about others, even strangers. That gives us hope." Charlotte spent time playing with the Martinez children, listening to their concerns about changing schools and missing their old friends. She found herself thinking about how different their Christmas would be from her own, and how unfair it seemed that circumstances beyond anyone's control could so dramatically affect a family's life. As they prepared to leave the community center, Charlotte turned to her mother with tears in her eyes. "Mummy, why do good people like the Martinez family have to go through such hard times?" Catherine knelt down to meet her daughter's gaze. "That's one of life's most difficult questions, darling. Sometimes bad things happen to good people, and we can't always understand why. But what we can do is make sure they know they're not alone and that people care about them. That's what you've done today with your cards." The drive home was quiet, Charlotte absorbed in processing all the emotions and experiences of the day. She had seen loneliness transformed into joy at the care home, witnessed the resilience of sick children and their families at the hospital, and met people facing circumstances she had never imagined at the community center. That evening, as Charlotte sat in her room looking at the thank you drawings that Tommy and other children had insisted she take home, she felt changed by the day's experiences. The abstract idea of helping others had become concrete and personal. She had names and faces to associate with concepts like loneliness, illness, and hardship, but she had also discovered the incredible power of human connection and compassion. Catherine found her daughter sitting quietly at her desk, staring thoughtfully out the window at the gardens of Anmerhall. "How are you feeling about today?" she asked gently. Charlotte was quiet for a moment before answering. "I feel sad about some of the things I saw, but also happy that we could make people smile." "Is that normal?" "That's exactly how you should feel," Catherine replied, sitting beside her daughter. "Compassion means feeling both the pain of others and the joy of being able to help. You did something beautiful today, Charlotte. You showed those people that they matter, that they're seen and valued. That's one of the most precious gifts you can give anyone." As Charlotte prepared for bed that night, her mind was already racing with ideas for how she could continue helping the people she had met. The Christmas card project had opened her eyes to a world beyond her own privileged existence, and she was determined to remain connected to the people who had touched her heart that day. The young princess had begun to understand that true service wasn't just about grand gestures or formal charitable events. It was about recognizing the humanity in every person and responding with love and compassion. As she drifted off to sleep, Charlotte was already planning her next visit to each location, knowing that the relationships she had begun that day were just the beginning of a lifetime commitment to serving others. The weeks following Charlotte's card deliveries were transformative in ways that neither she nor her family had anticipated. The young princess found herself thinking constantly about the people she had met, wondering how they were doing and what more she could do to help. Her bedroom walls were now decorated with the artwork that Tommy and other children from the hospital had given her, constant reminders of the connections she had made. But it was the pile of letters that had begun arriving at Kensington Palace that truly overwhelmed Charlotte with emotion. Word of her Christmas card project had somehow spread, and responses were pouring in from the recipients and their families. Each letter was a treasure that Charlotte read and reread, carrying them with her throughout the day. Mrs. Eleanor Thompson had written in her careful teacher's handwriting, "Dear Princess Charlotte, your beautiful card sits on my bedside table where I can see it every morning when I wake up. But, more than the card, your visit reminded me why I became a teacher in the first place, to touch young hearts and minds. You showed me that my life's work mattered, and that at 84, I still have value. Thank you for seeing me as a person, not just an elderly woman in a care home." Tommy's letter, written in crayon with help from his mother, included a drawing of Charlotte as a superhero with a cape and crown. "Dear Princess Charlotte, I am home now and my heart is all better. I showed everyone your card and told them about the real princess who came to see me. When I get scared about my heart, I look at your card and remember that you said I was brave. It makes me feel strong again. The letter that moved Charlotte most deeply came from Maria Martinez. Your Highness, I wanted you to know that Carlos found a job just 2 days after your visit. He says your card gave him the confidence he needed for his interview. We found a small apartment and will be moving in before Christmas. But, more importantly, your kindness reminded our children that there is goodness in the world. Sophia keeps your card in her backpack and tells her new classmates about the princess who cared enough to make her a card when she had no home. These letters sparked something profound in Charlotte. She realized that her mother's approach to charity work, the formal engagements, the institutional partnerships, the systematic support of various causes, was important and necessary. But Charlotte was discovering her own unique way of connecting with people, one that was more personal and direct. She began asking Catherine if they could make regular visits to the places they had been, not as official royal engagements, but as personal connections. Catherine, recognizing the sincerity of her daughter's request and seeing how the experience was shaping Charlotte's character, agreed to arrange monthly visits to each location. Their return to Sunshine Care Home 2 weeks before Christmas revealed the lasting impact of Charlotte's first visit. Mrs. Thompson had started a letter-writing circle, encouraging other residents to write to children in schools and hospitals. The previously withdrawn Mrs. Hughes had begun joining group activities again and was helping to plan the home's Christmas party. Your daughter changed something fundamental here, Margaret Davies told Catherine as they watched Charlotte helping residents make Christmas decorations. She didn't just visit once and leave. Through those cards and her genuine interest, she gave our residents a sense of purpose and connection they hadn't felt in years. Charlotte had brought art supplies with her this time, and she was teaching some of the more mobile residents how to make cards of their own. Mrs. Thompson was sharing stories from her teaching days, helping Charlotte understand different ways to encourage creativity in others. The room buzzed with laughter and conversation as residents who rarely spoke to each other began collaborating on projects. At the Children's Hospital, Charlotte's second visit coincided with Tommy's follow-up appointment. His recovery had progressed beautifully, and his mother credited Charlotte's visit as a turning point in his emotional healing. The nursing staff had created a Princess Charlotte's Corner in the ward, displaying all the thank you cards and drawings the children had made after her visit. But Charlotte was most excited to meet the new patients who had arrived since her first visit. 8-year-old Priya was scared and homesick, having been admitted for emergency surgery after an accident. Charlotte sat with her for over an hour, teaching her simple card-making techniques and listening to her fears about the upcoming procedure. "Will it hurt?" Priya asked, her large eyes filled with worry. Charlotte thought carefully before answering. "My mummy always tells me that brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do what you need to do even when you are scared. The doctors and nurses here are the best in the world, and they're going to take very good care of you. But, more than that, you have something inside you that's stronger than you know." She showed Priya how to make a brave card for herself, decorating it with stars and writing a personal message of encouragement that Priya could look at whenever she felt frightened. By the end of their time together, Priya was smiling and had promised to make a card for the next scared child who came to the ward. Dr. Walsh pulled Catherine aside during this visit to share some remarkable observations. "We've noticed a significant change in the overall atmosphere of the ward since Charlotte's first visit. The children talk about her constantly, but, more importantly, they've started taking care of each other the way she took care of them. They're making cards for new patients, sharing their toys more readily, and showing genuine concern for each other's well-being. Charlotte modeled compassionate behavior, and it's become contagious." At Riverside Community Center, Charlotte was thrilled to learn that the Martinez family had indeed moved into their new apartment, just as Maria's letter had mentioned. But she was equally interested in meeting the new families who had taken their place. Each family's story was different, but they all shared the common thread of unexpected hardship and the need for temporary support. Charlotte had prepared for this visit by researching different ways to help families in transition. She brought activity books for the children and had worked with Catherine to arrange for Christmas gifts to be distributed to all the families staying at the center. But her most innovative contribution was something she called hope cards, blank cards that she encouraged both children and adults to decorate with their dreams and goals for the future. Watching families work together on these hope cards, Charlotte began to understand something profound about human resilience. Despite facing circumstances that would discourage many people, these families continued to hope, to plan, and to support each other. A single mother named Janet, who had lost her apartment due to medical bills from her son's cancer treatment, created a hope card showing a graduation cap, her dream of finishing nursing school so she could better support her family. "What made you want to become a nurse?" Charlotte asked, genuinely curious. Janet smiled, watching her 12-year-old son David working on his own hope card nearby. When David was sick, the nurses were angels. They didn't just treat his illness, they treated our whole family with such kindness and respect. They made us feel human during the worst time of our lives. I want to do that for other families. Charlotte was struck by how Janet's difficult experience had inspired her to help others facing similar challenges. It reminded her of her mother's work and how personal experiences often drove people toward service. She was beginning to understand that her own privileged position came with both opportunities and responsibilities. These regular visits were changing Charlotte in ways that surprised even Catherine. The young princess was developing a sophisticated understanding of social issues, asking thoughtful questions about poverty, healthcare, aging, and community support systems. More importantly, she was learning to see each person as an individual with unique stories, dreams, and challenges. One evening, as they drove home from the community center, Charlotte surprised her mother with a serious question. "Mummy, do you think being a princess means I have to help people, or do you think I want to help people because of who I am inside?" Catherine considered the question carefully. It showed remarkable self-awareness for a 9-year-old and touched on fundamental questions about duty versus calling that Catherine herself had wrestled with over the years. "What do you think?" Catherine asked gently, wanting to hear her daughter's own thoughts. Charlotte was quiet for a moment, watching the winter landscape pass by outside the car window. "I think maybe both. Being a princess means I have chances to help that other people don't have. But, when I'm with Mrs. Thompson or Tommy or the Martinez family, I forget about being a princess. I just want to help because I care about them." Catherine felt tears spring to her eyes. In that moment, she knew that Charlotte was developing the kind of authentic compassion that couldn't be taught or mandated. It was growing naturally from genuine human connection and empathy. As December progressed and Christmas approached, Charlotte's card project evolved into something much larger. She had started corresponding regularly with several of the people she had met, and they had begun writing to her about their daily lives, challenges, and celebrations. Mrs. Thompson sent weekly letters sharing memories from her teaching days and asking about Charlotte's own education. Tommy's family sent photos of his recovery progress and drawings he created inspired by their friendship. The correspondence was teaching Charlotte lessons about friendship, loyalty, and long-term commitment that went far beyond charity work. She was learning that meaningful relationships required ongoing investment and genuine interest in others' welfare. Her desk drawer was filled with letters, cards, and small gifts from her new friends, each one precious to her. Catherine watched this development with wonder and some concern. She wanted to nurture Charlotte's compassionate instincts while also ensuring that her daughter maintained appropriate boundaries and didn't become overwhelmed by the needs she was encountering. It was a delicate balance between encouraging empathy and protecting Charlotte's own emotional well-being. The solution came from Charlotte herself. She suggested creating what she called a kindness circle, a group of young people her age who wanted to participate in regular community service. Working with Catherine and their staff, they identified several other children from families they knew who had expressed interest in charitable work. The first meeting of the Kindness Circle took place at Anmer Hall 2 weeks before Christmas. 6 children between the ages of 8 and 12 gathered in the family room, sharing their own experiences with community service and brainstorming ways they could work together to help others. Charlotte found herself naturally taking on a leadership role, sharing what she had learned from her card project and visits to various facilities. She talked about the importance of seeing each person as an individual and listening to their stories. She demonstrated card-making techniques and shared some of the letters she had received, with permission from the writers. But what impressed Catherine most was how Charlotte encouraged each child to find their own way of helping others. 10-year-old Marcus was interested in animals and wanted to create a program to bring therapy pets to hospitals. 8-year-old Emma loved to read and proposed creating a mobile library for families in temporary housing. 11-year-old James was fascinated by technology and suggested teaching computer skills to elderly residents in care homes. Charlotte's ability to inspire and organize her peers while respecting their individual interests and talents showed a maturity that went beyond her years. She was developing leadership skills that would serve her well throughout her life, but, more importantly, she was learning how to empower others to find their own paths toward service and compassion. As the Kindness Circle meeting concluded with plans for their first group project, a Christmas party for families at Riverside Community Center, Charlotte reflected on how much her life had changed since that first afternoon when she had decided to make cards for strangers. What had started as a simple gesture of kindness had grown into meaningful relationships, ongoing commitments, and a deeper understanding of her role in the world. That night, as she wrote in the diary she had started keeping to record her thoughts about her charitable work, Charlotte wrote, "I used to think being a princess meant wearing pretty dresses and going to fancy parties. Now I know it means using everything you have to make other people's lives better. Mummy showed me that through her work, but I'm finding my own way to do it too. I think this might be what I'm supposed to do with my life." Catherine, reading over the diary entry that Charlotte had shyly shown her, recognized in her daughter's words the emergence of a true calling toward service. Charlotte wasn't just following in her mother's footsteps, she was creating her own path, one that honored the values Catherine had taught her while expressing Charlotte's unique personality and gifts. The young princess was discovering that the most beautiful trait she could mirror from her mother wasn't any particular action or achievement, but rather the capacity to see the divine spark in every person and to respond with love, respect, and genuine care. As Christmas approached, Charlotte knew that this was just the beginning of a lifetime spent serving others, and she couldn't wait to see where this journey would take her. Christmas Eve morning dawned clear and bright over Sandringham Estate, where the royal family had gathered for their traditional holiday celebration. The ancient halls of the grand home were decorated with garlands, twinkling lights, and the scent of pine, creating an atmosphere of warmth and festivity that had marked royal Christmases for generations. But this year felt different to Charlotte, who found herself thinking not just about the celebrations ahead, but about all the people she had met who would be spending Christmas in care homes, hospitals, and temporary shelters. Charlotte woke early, as she always did on Christmas Eve, but instead of rushing downstairs to peek at the presents under the tree, she lay in her bed thinking about Mrs. Thompson, who had written that the care home was planning a special Christmas Day celebration. She thought about Tommy, who was spending his first Christmas at home after his surgery, and about the Martinez family in their new apartment. Each person had become real to her in a way that made the holiday feel both more meaningful and more complex. The traditional Christmas Eve schedule at Sandringham was always carefully planned: gift opening in the afternoon following German tradition, Christmas Eve service at St. Mary Magdalene Church, and a formal dinner. But this year, Charlotte had requested a change to the family's routine. She had asked if the Kindness Circle could host their Christmas party for the families at Riverside Community Center that morning before the royal family's celebrations began. Catherine had been initially hesitant about the timing, concerned that it might be too much for Charlotte to manage both her charitable commitments and family obligations on such an important day. But when she saw the determination in her daughter's eyes and heard the thoughtful reasoning behind the request, she had worked with the staff to make it possible. Christmas should be about giving before receiving, Charlotte had explained to her mother. If we have our party first, then, when we open our own presents, we'll remember how good it feels to make other people happy. The community center had been transformed for the occasion. The Kindness Circle had spent weeks planning every detail, from decorations made in art therapy sessions with residents at Sunshine Care Home to entertainment provided by the children themselves. Charlotte had coordinated with local businesses to provide gifts for every family member, but she had insisted that the gifts be practical items that families actually needed, rather than traditional toys or luxury items. When Charlotte arrived at the community center that morning, she was struck by the nervous excitement she felt. This was different from her earlier visits. Today, she wasn't just giving cards or making individual connections, she was hosting an event that would impact multiple families simultaneously. She felt the weight of wanting everything to be perfect for people who had so little. The families began arriving shortly after 10 o'clock, and Charlotte was amazed by the transformation she witnessed. Children who had been shy and withdrawn during her previous visits were running around excitedly, their faces bright with anticipation. Parents who had carried the stress of uncertain circumstances were smiling and laughing with each other, forming connections with other families facing similar challenges. Maria Martinez approached Charlotte with tears in her eyes, carrying a small wrapped package.
"Princess Charlotte, my family wanted to give you something."
"It's not much, but Sophia made it herself." Charlotte opened the package to find a small ceramic angel that 8-year-old Sophia had painted in art class at her new school. The angel's face was slightly crooked and the wings were different colors, but it was clearly made with love and care. "Sophia said angels are supposed to watch over people and keep them safe," Maria explained.
"She wanted you to have one because you watched over our family when we needed it most."
Charlotte held the little angel carefully, overwhelmed by the significance of the gift. Here was a family who had been homeless just weeks earlier, giving her something precious that their daughter had created. It represented a kind of generosity that had nothing to do with material wealth and everything to do with gratitude and love.
The party itself exceeded everyone's expectations.
Marcus had arranged for a local pet therapy organization to bring gentle dogs for children to play with, creating moments of pure joy for kids who had experienced too much stress and uncertainty in their young lives.
Emma had set up a reading corner where she read Christmas stories to younger children while their parents enjoyed adult conversation.
James had created a simple computer game that taught basic typing skills, turning learning into entertainment. But it was Charlotte's contribution that created the most memorable moments of the day. She had prepared what she called dream boxes for each family, beautiful containers that she had decorated herself, filled with art supplies, journals, and materials for creating vision boards about their hopes for the future. But, more importantly, each box contained a personal letter from Charlotte to the family, acknowledging their specific circumstances and expressing her belief in their strength and potential. Watching families open their dream boxes and read Charlotte's personal letters, Catherine felt overwhelmed by pride in her daughter's emotional intelligence and genuine care for others. Charlotte had somehow managed to research each family's situation and write letters that were both encouraging and specific to their needs. A single mother pursuing her GED received encouragement about the importance of education, a father looking for work received words of support about perseverance and self-worth. The most powerful moment came when Charlotte stood up to address the group. At 9 years old, she had never given a formal speech, but she felt compelled to share her feelings about the relationships she had formed over the past month. "When I first started making Christmas cards," she began, her voice clear but slightly nervous, "I thought I was just giving something to people who needed it. But I learned that you all gave me something much more valuable. You taught me what courage looks like when someone loses their job but doesn't give up. You showed me what love means when a mother stays strong for her children even when she's scared. You demonstrated what hope is when families believe in tomorrow even when today is hard." She paused, looking around the room at faces that had become precious to her. "My mummy always says that being royal means serving others, but you've taught me that serving others actually means letting them serve you too. You've made me a better person, and I'm grateful to know all of you." The room was completely silent except for the soft sounds of people crying. These families, who had felt forgotten and marginalized by their circumstances, were being told by a member of the royal family that they had value and wisdom to offer. It was a moment of mutual recognition and respect that transcended social boundaries. After the party, as Charlotte helped clean up and said goodbye to each family, she felt changed in a fundamental way. The nervous excitement of the morning had transformed into a deep sense of satisfaction and purpose. She had discovered something important about herself. Organizing and hosting events that brought joy to others felt natural and fulfilling to her. The drive to Sandringham was quiet, with Charlotte absorbed in reflection about the morning's events. She clutched Sophia's ceramic angel in her hands, thinking about the profound lesson it represented about generosity and gratitude. When they arrived at the estate, the contrast between the grand surroundings and the simple community center was striking. But Charlotte found that instead of feeling guilty about her privilege, she felt energized by the responsibility it represented. The traditional gift opening that afternoon took on new meaning for Charlotte. As she unwrapped beautiful presents from her family, she found herself thinking about creative ways to share her good fortune. Some of her gifts were art supplies, which she immediately began planning to donate to the Children's Hospital for activity programs. Others were books, which she thought could form the foundation of Emma's mobile library project. But the gift that moved her most came from her parents, a beautiful wooden box filled with elegant stationery, personalized with her name and title. Attached was a note from Catherine, "For our daughter, who has shown us that true royalty lies in genuine care for others. May these help you continue the important correspondence and friendships you have begun." Charlotte understood the significance of the gift immediately. Her parents were acknowledging and supporting her commitment to maintaining the relationships she had formed. They were recognizing her charitable work not as a childhood phase, but as an emerging calling that deserved to be nurtured and respected. That evening, as the family prepared for the Christmas Eve service at St. Mary Magdalene Church, Charlotte found herself thinking about the nature of Christmas itself. The holiday was supposed to commemorate the birth of someone who had devoted his life to serving others, particularly those who were poor, marginalized, or forgotten. Her own small efforts to reach out to people in need suddenly felt connected to something much larger and more timeless. The church service was beautiful, filled with traditional carols and readings that Charlotte had heard her entire life. But this year, the words seemed to carry new meaning. When the congregation sang about peace on earth and goodwill toward all people, Charlotte thought about Mrs. Thompson finding renewed purpose in her elderly years, Tommy discovering his own courage during illness, and the Martinez family rebuilding their life with dignity and hope. After the service, as the royal family walked back to Sandringham under a canopy of stars, William placed his hand on Charlotte's shoulder. "I'm very proud of you, Charlotte," he said quietly. "What you've accomplished this month goes far beyond charity work. You've shown real leadership and genuine compassion." Charlotte looked up at her father, surprised by the seriousness in his voice. "I just wanted to help people feel less alone," she replied simply. "That's exactly what true service is about," William responded. "You've understood something at 9 years old that many people never learn, that helping others isn't about fixing their problems or changing their circumstances. It's about recognizing their humanity and letting them know they're seen and valued." Back at Sandringham, as Charlotte prepared for bed on Christmas Eve, she took out the new stationery her parents had given her and began writing thank you letters to everyone who had participated in the day's Christmas party. But, more than expressing gratitude, she was making commitments for the future. She promised Mrs. Thompson that she would continue visiting the care home and helping with the letter-writing circle. She assured Tommy's family that she wanted to stay in touch as he continued growing stronger. She told the Martinez family that she looked forward to hearing about their new adventures in their permanent home. As she wrote, Charlotte realized that her Christmas card project had evolved into something much more significant, a network of relationships based on mutual care and respect. She was no longer just a princess doing charity work, she was a young person who had found her calling in connecting with and supporting others. The last letter she wrote that night was to her future self, a tradition Catherine had taught her for important occasions. "Dear future Charlotte," she wrote in her careful script, "I hope you remember this Christmas and how good it felt to make other people happy. I hope you keep being friends with Mrs. Thompson and Tommy and all the families we helped. I hope you never forget that being a princess means using everything you have to make the world more beautiful for everyone." She sealed the letter in an envelope marked to be opened Christmas 2034 and placed it in the wooden box with her stationery. Christmas morning dawned with fresh snow covering the Sandringham grounds, creating a picture-perfect holiday scene. But, for Charlotte, the most beautiful part of the day was the phone call she received from Mrs. Thompson, who wanted to wish her a Merry Christmas and tell her about the wonderful Christmas party the care home residents had hosted for local children using skills they had learned in Charlotte's card-making workshops. "You started something magical, dear," Mrs. Thompson said, her voice warm with happiness. "These old hands have been busy making cards and decorations for weeks. We've remembered what it feels like to create joy for others." Later that morning, as the royal family exchanged gifts and enjoyed their traditional Christmas breakfast, Charlotte felt surrounded by love and purpose. The ceramic angel from Sofia sat on her bedside table, a reminder of the beautiful truth she had discovered, that giving and receiving were not opposite actions, but part of the same continuous circle of human connection and care. Catherine watched her daughter throughout the day, marveling at the change she saw. Charlotte had always been a kind and thoughtful child, but the past month had revealed depths of empathy and leadership that were remarkable for her age. More importantly, Charlotte seemed to have found something that many people search for their entire lives, a sense of purpose that brought her joy while serving others. As the day wound down and the family gathered for evening prayers, Charlotte offered to say the blessing. Her words were simple but profound. "Thank you for showing us that Christmas isn't about what we get, but about what we give. Thank you for reminding us that everyone has something beautiful to offer the world. And thank you for helping us remember that love grows bigger when we share it with others." That night, as Charlotte fell asleep in her bed at Sandringham, surrounded by the warmth and security of her family's love, she dreamed about all the people whose lives had touched hers over the past month. In her dreams, they were all connected by invisible threads of kindness and care that stretched across different circumstances and situations, creating a beautiful tapestry of human connection. The young princess had discovered that the most beautiful trait she could mirror from her mother wasn't any specific action or achievement, but rather the capacity to see the sacred worth in every person and to respond with authentic love and care. Her Christmas moment had become a Christmas transformation, one that would guide her for the rest of her life. Charlotte had learned that true royalty wasn't about crowns or titles or grand gestures. It was about recognizing that every human being deserved to be seen, valued, and loved. And, in learning this lesson, she had not only honored her mother's example but had begun to create her own unique legacy of compassion and service. As the snow continued to fall gently outside her window, Princess Charlotte slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that she had found her calling, to spend her life building bridges of understanding and care between people, one relationship at a time. The Christmas card project had ended, but Charlotte's real work was just beginning.